Let's have a look at the next task on our list. This is P4, which is thankfully a breeze compared to M2. Let's jump in and see what the specification tells us. The overview is that you need to present your proposed design solution to the client. And in fact, it'll be to me and the rest of the class that you're presenting it, but I will be then letting the client know about your presentation. So from the marking guidance, bearing in mind this is what the moderator will be looking at when he or she goes through your work, learners must present their proposed design solution to the client. We've covered that. The presentation must be fit for purpose, undertaken appropriate quality checks, sufficiently detailed to enable the client to understand the key features of their proposed solution. Evidence should be in the form, or could be in the form, of a presentation that's either videoed or with detailed speaker notes, or could be a formal report. So that's a lot of verbiage in one place, but if we try and break this down into a more understandable tasks and break it down into chunks, these are the 6 main areas that you're going to need to make sure that you get right to pass this task. First of all, you're going to present your design to the client, and it needs to be formal. It needs to be formal in terms of the way in which you present it, and formal in terms of the presentation that you make. The presentation must be fit for purpose. What do they mean by that? The question is, could the client make a decision on whether to go or no go based on this presentation and this presentation alone? Number 4, appropriate quality checks. The quality checks are talking about, have you quoted your sources? Have you backed up your statements with evidence? Or are you just making things up? Is there enough detail, number 5, to grasp the key features? And actually, number 5 is really a bit of a rehash of number 3. If the presentation is fit for purpose and a decision could be made, clearly then you would be talking about all of the features the client had requested. And the last point there, number 6, is detailed speaker notes, or it can be videoed. I'm going to video this. However, that means that while you don't have to submit detailed notes with it, you are actually going to need those notes in order to give your presentation. More on that later on. So what I'm going to do next is break down each of these 6 points into a smaller sub-point and give you a chance to understand exactly what it is that you need to produce. So first of all, just some ideas to help you. The presentation needs to be 5 to 6 minutes in length, no longer than 6 minutes. You'll be stopped after 6 minutes. However, I would say that if your presentation is shorter than 4 minutes, we found in the past that presentations that are shorter than that simply don't have all the required information. You're going to need to rehearse your pitch before you do it. You can't just turn up and do it. You need to appear to be slick in the same way that someone presenting on Dragon's Den would have practiced it a dozen times in front of people. You will deliver the pitch in class, you'll be videoed, and you can use notes. You can have a couple of index cards perhaps if you need to help you, to back you up with some particular figures that you want to use, or maybe just to keep yourself on track. But of course you can use speaker notes in PowerPoint, and those appear on screen as well, but can't be seen by the audience. So however you go about doing this, you are going to need notes, unless you've learnt the entire thing off by heart. But in your case, notes could be a good way of ensuring you don't miss any salient details. So now we go on to the idea that the presentation has to be formal. This was the second point. When we talk about it being formal, we mean that the language needs to be business language. I pulled a few of you up on using words like cheap rather than using least expensive, or using the word steep rather than saying that something is less expensive than something else. And those are just some of the examples of slang appearing in your work. It's important that you sound like you are a business person delivering a pitch, because after all, you're looking for Justin to invest £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 in you. In terms of the structure, this needs to be well structured so that you are telling a story and it makes sense, and that you are going through it piece by piece by piece in a logical way. The typeface that you use should be professional. It should be easy to read, but it should scream of professional, serious type of presentation. Comic Sans would be a bad choice, for example. Legibility. think about the importance of the words on screen being easy to read. So that's first of all thinking about your background and thinking about your text color. If you look at the example here, this screen, this is about the most amount of text that you could put on a screen. I've reduced and reduced and reduced my words on this screen, and it started off being a sentence or two for each of these 8 points, but I've managed to get it down to 8 punchy headlines, and I'm then going to talk around them. So don't feel that you've got to put everything you're going to say on screen, because that's not what what presentation software is for. That's what your notes are for, or your notes on PowerPoint are for. You're just using PowerPoint or whatever product you're using to simply keep people on track, let them know what's coming next, what the key points are that you're making. Don't have everything on screen. So if you've got more text on screen than I've got there, and okay, you could have a few more words on each of those points, but that's about the maximum. Less is more. You're going to talk around the extra points. Images. You will need images on there. You'll need an image for perhaps, maybe you need a table when you're presenting figures. Maybe you need a Gantt chart. Maybe you need something to demonstrate what the dash camera will look like. Spag. Check your spelling, check your grammar. There is a spell check on PowerPoint, but make sure that you don't make a spelling mistake, because it screams of lack of preparedness if you're putting up slides with spelling mistakes on them. It's just really bad form and definitely frowned upon. And it's not a question of getting at people whose spelling isn't good. You can use a spell check. You can get someone else to check it. There's no excuse for making mistakes on screen, not in business. And then think about your colour scheme, which I've kind of already covered, but make sure that it's professional. Make sure that you're not showing slides of your summer holidays. You are doing a professional business presentation, and ultimately you're asking for an investment of £6,000 or £7,000, which is a significant amount for Justin. Let's jump onto the second part of this, which is you actually giving the presentation. You need to be well drilled, well rehearsed. You should have practiced this. I shouldn't be hearing it for the first time for something you've thrown together the night before, because it'll mean that you'll have to do it again. I won't accept someone umming and ahhing their way through a presentation, because it means you haven't practiced. In real life, if you turned up for a presentation without having prepared yourself properly, they would never ever employ you again or give you a chance to earn money through them. So, if it's well rehearsed, it'll be well delivered. If you've rehearsed it, it will lead to a confident delivery. Yes, you'll be nervous. Yes, doing it in front of your friends and peers is difficult, but if you can do it in this situation, you can do it in any situation. And ultimately, this is the course you're doing, which was likely to lead to you having to do presentations to clients in the future. So it's important to actually practice this skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. When you give your presentation, all of your facts need to be researched. You have to be able to prove everything that you've said. Some of the facts that we've seen in M2 have been things that you've made up or half heard me say, and I've sent you back and said, no, if you can't prove it, don't put it in there. If someone turned up and said, I'll fix your roof, it'll be £8,000, you'd want to know how on earth they're coming to that figure. Anyway, last thing, handouts. You might want to use handouts to give to people for more detail than you'd rather put on screen, or for a reminder of what you've covered. Either way, handouts work very well when you're doing presentations. And don't forget, when you give your presentation, you will stand up and you will deliver it like a teacher in a classroom, or in fact like a business person giving a presentation. That would be the expectation. When we talk about the presentation being fit for purpose, these are the sorts of things that we're thinking. Ultimately, when I look at your presentation and when I review it afterwards, I'm going to ask myself one question. Would I spend the money based on what you told me? Can I make an informed decision on whether you're the person to invest £7,000 in based on your 5 or 6 minute presentation? Have you told me how you're going to resolve each of the things that I asked for in my brief, in the letter? Have you solved all of those? And have you solved them well? Have you thought about all of them? Do I know what everything's going to cost? Have you explained how long it'll take and shown me a Gantt chart? What about legal implications? What do I need to do? I want to see a demonstration of the product. Do I go away knowing exactly what it's going to look like? I should do. And have you fact-checked everything that you're telling me? Or are you making anything up? Those are the sorts of questions that are going to be so important. And if the moderator looks at your work and thinks, nah, I don't believe it, that would give them the ability to say it's a fail. Could you make an informed decision based on the pitch? If you get everything in there, then the answer would be yes, you can make an informed decision. Don't forget, all of this material that you're using for this presentation, you have effectively already covered it in P2 and in M2. So it's not a question of rehashing, it's a question of bringing it together in a format that would suit presenting to a client live. Appropriate quality checks. This is about facts. Are your facts and figures accurate? Do I know where you've got your costs from? Have you got sources? I asked for the sources to be checked. Each of your sources should be listed, where it's come from, which website, or are you just making it up? What about the images of the dash cam? Do I know what it's going to look like? What about the scheduling? Why is that going to take 2 weeks? Why is that going to take 3 weeks? You're not going to have time to go into detail about every single phase and every single task, but I want to understand how long things are going to take and roughly how it gets broken down, which will mean talking through your Gantt chart. How can you prove that what you're saying is possible? Again, a handout. Having a handout is a really helpful way of supporting your presentation and any facts or figures that you're not going to have the opportunity to give out. What about this idea of enough detail to grasp key features? We've kind of already handled that. If you've done everything that you should have done and you've been through all of the requests that were made for in the brief, then really you should have enough detail to grasp the key features. And the key features are making bookings, the Tutor Pro integration, the dash cam, the social media, the comments, and a few other things too that I've not listed there. But those need to be in. All these key features need to be in the presentation that you're making. Now, we talked about detailed speaker notes. You're going to need notes to work from unless you learn the whole thing off by heart. The choice is yours. You don't need to submit speaker notes because you're going to be videoed. A little bit of stress that it incurs, and that idea of a performance, because you are doing a performance a bit like Dragon's Den. You're standing up and you're selling the idea that you've come up with, and you should be proud you've worked so hard on these ideas so far. So that covers everything that you need to do in terms of understanding the key tasks, and I'll go through some of the checklists that you need to make sure that you run through in the next part.